All right, so now we're going to look at the RO membrane and how to change it and when you should change it. So the RO membrane is typically going to remove about 95 to 99% of the solids from the water. Now, that's highly dependent on source conditions and other conditions involving pressure. Ideally, when your RO membrane hits around 80% efficiency, it's really time for a change. So we're going to go ahead and see how we're going to remove these housings, expose the inner chamber where you'll find the RO membrane, and how to remove it safely without damaging any part of your system. So the bolts that hold on these clamps are typically size 14. However, on some models, we've sent out a slightly different hardware that's kind of bluish, which you'll use a size 13. If you have an adjustable wrench, you'll be good to go in almost any situation. I personally recommend having a drill because it makes it easier to remove the tension from these bolts. So we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts that hold on the clamps here. Go right here, just loosen, and because this is an example, I have slightly different hardware on this system. But on your system, more than likely, you're going to see a 14 millimeter sized bolt. I'm going to go ahead and loosen. So you'll notice your clamp starts to free. I recommend, to avoid any obstruction, let's remove this top hose here. So we'll go ahead, pull on the blue end of the fitting, and pull opposite on the hose. Sometimes it requires a little twist. We'll let the hose just set to the side. And now, because the bolts are loose, you'll be able to loosen by hand here. If you reattach your nut to the bolt, you'll never lose your hardware. For now, we'll actually put this to the side. So now, you'll just see your RO cap and your housing. Now to remove, you'll notice this lip here, this plastic lip. The cap is usually on here pretty tight. So this lip is what you'll utilize to help free it from the housing. Now how do we do that? We're going to take a big flathead. It's helpful to have a nice big flathead for leverage and negotiation. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm sitting the flathead between the plastic notch here. Not the metal, but the plastic. And I'm angling upward while standing on the frame. This just allows a little bit more security. And then if you have a mallet of sorts, you'll begin tapping on the flathead to help loosen. Now, it's not going to come out easily, I will tell you that. You basically want to free just enough space so if you find you're not budging from a particular side, go all the way around the system, little by little. Stand on it, go all the way around. All right, so I was just able to get a tiny little lip. Your goal is to be able to fit the thin end of a flathead. Now I have a second one, a smaller one for little leverage. I personally recommend you do so, because now you'll see, as I shoved in between that little lip, it allows me to start opening this almost like a paint can. Some caps are more difficult than others, but once you have enough clearance between your cap and your housing, let's give ourselves a little more leverage. So little by little, the cap will become loose. Now I'm trying not to dig into the plastic as much, but just enough to be able to get enough of the flathead in. Okay. So once you start seeing a nice gap in here, I personally recommend stand on the system, take both hands, and pull upward. Sometimes the cap will come out itself. Other times, you may find the membrane wants to come out with the cap. If that ever happens, this can be separated by taking your flathead and going in between this white cap end of the membrane and the black end of the cap. Go through the side. I recommend doing so with the membrane still in the housing. It's easier than holding a bunch of wet equipment trying to separate the cap from the membrane. I'm going to take our cap and put it to the side. And now we're going to want to remove the membrane. Now, I have channel locks here. You can use pliers, needle nose pliers. So you'll want a grip from one of these side spindles here. So I'm going to go ahead, grip as such. And once again, standing on the system, and I'm pulling upward. Then take out our old membrane. So for example's sake, we're going to say this is our new membrane. Now all membranes come like so, where you'll have a black seal on one end and then no seal on the other. This is called a brine seal. Now this seal is what allows water to get forced through the center here of the RO membrane. That water is then forced and permeated through pressure to then allow pure water to enter the center chamber, which then exits through the bottom. Most importantly, for a good seal, you want to use that magic lube. So we're going to go ahead and take a little bit. I'm going to do this one-handed. So I'm going to take a little bit of magic lube and only apply it to the brine seal here. Even from a maintenance perspective, relubricating seals is a good habit to get into, as you'll get better system performance. But all right, so now that we have our brine seal lubricated, you'll notice I have the brine seal facing upward. That is because water enters through the top of this housing. So you want to place it into the stainless steel housing, guide it downwards. When you have about a foot left, you'll want to give it a little twist and let it drop in. Now there's water in this housing, so it kind of sunk in. Sometimes you might have to push down a little bit. I just use my thumbs on those little spindles, and it allows the membrane to sit back down. Next, we're going to take our top cap, and we'll notice you have two sets of O-rings here. You have an inner set and an outer set. It's important that these are properly lubricated. You do not want to over lubricate the center O-rings because that is where the pure water is traveling. Too much lube may create a blockage somewhere that you don't want to create. So just apply a little lube here. I actually use some of the existing lube, and these O-rings look pretty well lubricated. You'll just want to make sure it's nicely lubricated for that seal. Next, we'll take our cap, and you'll go ahead and push down until the plastic meets the metal. At that point, you're ready to start attaching your clamps and close up this housing. So, you're going to take your clamp And you'll notice the plastic lip and the metal lip have the same shape. That is where the clamp is going to wrap around. And when you see you have only a small little black lip here, and the rest of the clamp is around the cap, you know you have a good seal. You do not want to put your clamp like this anywhere here and tighten below this lip. Why? Because the second this pressurizes, this cap is not secure, so it can fly off. You want to make sure you're getting both the metal and the plastic when attaching your clamps. So we'll go ahead and reattach. Take our drill and tighten as such. I have two different sizes. That is just example's sake. Okay, once your clamps are on and secured, you want to make sure that you re-hook your pre-filter hose to the RO inlet. So I'll show you again with the push fit. We're going to push and twist. Make sure it's nice and solid. And there we go. Our RO membrane has been changed, lubricated, and replaced.